Hello, guys. I'm here to talk about the one, the only Halo Combat Evolved. This is pretty much one of my favorite games of all time. One of my favorite shooters for sure. Um, and I remember being mesmerized as a little boy on the main menu screen for this game because it just had these epic Gregorian chants with like these weird instrumentals that just were this otherworldly feeling altogether, and just the image of the Halo ring uh, in the main menu just rotating slowly as this ominous, mysterious thing inviting you to explore it was just unreal. Of course, advanced or associated with the advanced hyper militarism uh, iconic of something like Starship Troopers, and a really interesting, alien design that isn't just random bugs, but is actually a pseudo religious theocratic hierarchy of different races of aliens all fighting together was extremely interesting. The other thing that I think I like about Halo, the original, compared to its predecessors, is probably the weight and meatiness of all of the weapons and movement. I think a staple of the Halo series has been the fact that, you can jump like it's zero gravity. And in fact, that's kind of borrowed from Bungie's previous work in the Marathon series, where everything kind of took place in space, and so your movement speed was very fast, and you kind of almost float down. And it is something that I really do appreciate, and the fact that they kind of said, you are this super soldier who is the last of your kind fighting to save Earth or save humanity, but you're stuck on this alien relic. And so I think it's a great mixture of this hyper technical future, almost mech fetish, military futurism, along with esoteric, ancient, religious kind of themes, and and the concept of these ancient civilizations which have you know been far removed from our time and perished and have left behind these colosseums or these ruins which are functioning today as a form of some kind of exotic weapon that is beyond our comprehension. I find it to be really, really fascinating. The entire world of Halo is just an amazing, one of a kind experience that, frankly, only Bungie can write. And I think Bungie's, people, the whole kind of Halo community right now is, after the release of Halo 4, 5, and Infinite, they're just kind of coming to terms that it's just not going to be the same. And I kind of knew that from the get-go. And you can't really understand Halo until you come back to the roots of this first game and really understanding what they were trying to accomplish and what the vibe was here, because it was so distinct and different. I think this was technically my first shooter. It's funny though, because I think I was better at it than all my other friends, because I practiced in the Ocarina of Time rupee shooting minigame quite a bit. So by the time this rolled around, I was actually pretty adept at it and actually pretty good at shooters because of Zelda, funnily enough. Also, this opening cutscene, the storytelling in Halo it's something that, I don't know, I find it incredibly unique and fun in the sense that it drops you into the middle of a conflict. The plot just kind of moves along at a really good clip. Multiple things are happening. I think the kind of secret formula of Halo's story, and you see this more so in 2 than in 1, is that there's something always constantly escalating. And I think it decided this in the Halo books, that humanity is always up against the wall. And the Master Chief as a character is written as human adaptability. If you lose this frigate or you lose this command post, that then changes the battle to now, oh, we can now get them with this, or now that this thing has been discovered, now we can do this with it, or hey, we need to find a way to take out these satellites. The Master Chief just might fly a plane into them and bomb them and jump out with a rocket launcher. It's kind of like whatever is impossible or whatever needs to be done, even if it's completely insane, he'll do it. And it's the idea that no matter how dire the situation is, there is an insane way to get out of it. And it's kind of funny because that's the same kind of mantra that the Arbiter goes by in Halo 2. They send him on suicide missions, essentially. But the Chief always comes out on top. And the Halo lore reason for this is actually revealed in the beginning of Halo 3 in the monologue by Cortana, which is that John is simply lucky. There's just something special about him. Aside from him being a super soldier with, enhanced strength, speed, vision, and all that good stuff, he's just lucky. And, this opening cutscene, too, is really funny. That I don't remember exactly the inside joke here, but Captain Keyes hands you a empty pistol, which then immediately you walk out of the brig and immediately it's loaded. I don't know if there's I forget the inside joke as to why that is, or if that's just what it is, for the sake of it. But it's interesting, as I said, the meatiness, the weightiness of this pistol. When you hit the enemy with melee, the assault rifle in this game is one of my beloved weapons. Well, actually, my gun wife of all time is the S7 sniper rifle from this game. It's accurate. It has basically no recoil, which of course was not copacetic to the multiplayer focused later installments. But it was basically a recoilless 4-bullet semi-auto rifle, sniper rifle with 2-scope, enhancement and night vision. And it today is the weapon. It's the weapon that I picked up and I realized I love sniper classes. It was my calling, my coming home. Back to the story, though. When you actually start the game, you are just thrown, like, there is no context. You were thrown into the story in the sense that you are a human class frigate that basically has just escaped the Battle of Reach. You have basically warped from a losing battle with this alien force called the Covenant into a random vector. And so the human ship basically jumps to this random point in space, and by complete and utter coincidence, it has found this ancient alien artifact that is not part of the aliens that you're fighting, but as it turns out is something that this alien race that currently has the upper hand on humanity has been searching for. And so already you have a mixture of intrigue, mystery, history. I might review the Marathon series, but one thing that was very big in Marathon's design and lore and story is the translation of ancient documents. You would find random things where you'd expect to find dialogue from one of the NPCs that was guiding you through the missions. You'd find a battle report of Charlemagne of France from like the 7th century. And it's just like, okay. It's like, all right, sure, whatever. I know it's not impressive now, but there were a lot of things that Halo was doing that at a time when it came out were kind of revolutionary. I'm going to try my best to remember what is completely new. But what was new is, for example, is the fact you have a 2-weapon system. It was a really interesting restriction because most FPSs from this era, especially in the 90s, is used to what I call library shooter. You just are carrying everything on your back. You are carrying like 20 different weapons like Doom, and it doesn't matter how hard it is to cycle through. So this took a more of a realistic approach that made sense in the sense that you can only carry 2 weapons at a time, and you press Y to switch between them. And I guess this forces players to adapt their kind of strategy to, okay, I can't have everything all at once, and sometimes less is more in this case, because then you really, decide which weapons are going to be the ones you're going to use for this specific situation, or you can find weapon combinations like the classic plasma rifle charge and battle rifle in Halo 2. Another thing that I love about this game are the grenades are just absolutely massive. They're absolutely if you find a group of grenades and throw one in there, they will actually chain explode, and you can get some absolutely insane frame drops and explosions going on in the game engine. Another thing, of course, that's huge that Halo pioneered was regenerative health. It's funny, in this game they still have the med packs on the side of the walls, so you would basically, pick up those med packs if you lost health, but really your main source of health was your regenerating shield. Another thing they did is your grenades are also tied to a direct button. That's not super revolutionary. I think Call of Duty was doing that, but it was kind of new-ish at the time that grenades were not just a different weapon, but they actually had their own designated trigger. Another thing that's cool is that you could, of course, pick up enemy weapons, as that's not super new, but the fact that the enemy weapons you were picking up had very different properties. The plasma rifles and plasma pistols, were useful against taking out shields, while the human-based, NATO ammo weapons were good at hitting meaty targets. Of course, I think a great thing that someone actually brought up and I didn't realize is in these early games, what's really good that Bungie definitely did in the Marathon series that's present here is color theory. And you really wouldn't think that color theory in first-person shooters would have such an important relationship, but they really do. Essentially in the sense that, the elites, while they have a very unique design, are very simply color-coded. The grunts are red and orange and yellow. The elites are blue, and sometimes, the elite silver version of every enemy exists. But the elites are usually blue and red, and so not only from their silhouette, but also from their color coordination, can you determine the difficulty and threat that an enemy has. A lot of Halo seems to be based around being able to understand the battlefield situation immediately and being able to adapt to it quickly, as the Master Chief would in the actual story. Another thing that's kind of new is that you have an attached flashlight. Flashlights, I think, were kind of new at this time. And they kind of added a certain horror aspect, which Halo definitely does explore later in the campaign. And cosmic horror is also being another part of this game. It's just another layer of genre that makes Halo feel like a multi-genre experience and really transcend its medium, which I always loved about it. Of course, as happens in the in the second mission, the first mission you're kind of tied to these corridors. You just are learning the basic controls of gunplay. But not only visually, but mechanically, when you enter into the second level, you kind of crash land on Halo, and you open up the the escape pod, and this whole almost open world, it feels like, opens up before you, and suddenly you're in this massive world where there are different vehicles and things flying around, and the vehicles in this game control very intuitively. Some people might disagree with that, but you basically use the sticks to control them. None of the triggers to accelerate or decelerate. You actually use only the sticks to control the vehicles in the game. And so the way it interacts with the environment, it feels very chunky, it feels very fluid, it feels very appropriate. And the way that you can actually navigate throughout the world using the vehicles is honestly a lot of fun. And the vehicles were a huge aspect of Halo. Vehicles in first-person shooters, for some odd reason, have been a very difficult thing to do. Call of Duty struggled with it. Even, like, I can think World at War is the only one that really did vehicles, and even then they kind of, went away from that in their later installments. So Halo was one of the few games where vehicles honestly just worked really, really well and become a staple of the series ever since. Another thing, of course, just looking at the HUD, you have the motion tracker. That was kind of a novel thing at the time. Obviously, basically stolen from Alien. The fact that plasma grenades would stick to enemies was pretty novel as well. I think what's also nice is that despite it being an M-rated game, you only see really a lot of blood when you intentionally bludgeon the enemy or a slain corpse. And even then, it's, green and blue blood, something you see out of something like, I don't know, Jet Force Gemini or a Rare game, which always made it, I don't know, kind of, even though it's an M-rated game, it's still kind of kid-friendly in that sense. And I think it should be in that way, because while I can tell a serious story, I think it just deserves to be experienced by so many different age groups and people, because it is really so good. And of course, you can also say, oh, well, you can only see human blood if you intentionally take it out on the humans and pummel them, and you're a sadistic kind of a kind of person, i.e. that the game is only evil if it allows you to be. Also, this game also have crouch jumping. I think in Half-Life they kind of have crouch jumping as a direct kind of intentional mechanic, while in Halo it's kind of unintentional, and because it's unintentional, you can use it to get to certain out-of-bound places and things for skulls and such, but that's really in Halo 2. Another thing is I love the melee in this game. It's just a big meaty whack that just feels like you've like eviscerated and pummeled someone into dust or to goo or something. The vehicles in this game, from the Warthog to the Banshee and eventually the Scorpion, oh my god, the Scorpion. You just feel so goddamn powerful. You feel like a god when you get in some of these vehicles, and it completely changes the experience. Everything feels big and purposeful and just super, super powerful. I also love the grunts and the elites in this game, just their dialogue and the way they scream and run. Even the sound of the elites and how they talk and with their warts, it tells you something about their class of warrior in the universe, and their threat level to the player. It's also very funny that as a mechanic, if you take out the elite, usually the other grunts will scatter and run away. I think it's also very funny and interesting that there are like multiple, so to speak, cultures. That we really see that more so in Halo 2, where the humans call them elites, but there's an actual lore behind them and their race that they're called Sangheli or Sangheli, and so these there's an official term and then there's the human term, so it can keep it you can dumb it down for the average player to use the average terminology and lingo, but then there's also the deeper lore aspect, which is, for the more intense and interested players. Again, what I'm seeing about, the story and the progression of everything from the gameplay loop is that the story aspects and components just move at such a fast clip, while, of course, being associated by really, really good music. And of all the games this is reminding me of is actually Sonic Adventure 2. The story structure is kind of very similar. It's like, this thing happens and this thing happens, and all the while you have the music, and I haven't really talked about it yet, but the music in the Halo series, not just this one, but really that's used as a basis, is just simply incredibly amazing and good. And a cooperation with Gregorian chants and an FPS sci-fi shooter, there's That's something that is just simply Halo, and there's nothing else that really comes to mind that has tried something like that, and to tell a serious, interesting story. Something else that really makes Halo work, even from a characterization perspective, is Master Chief and Cortana's relationship. You know, Chief is a man of few words and many actions, and Cortana kind of fills in the rest of the dialogue of the game with banter. And it's such a refreshing thing that I think only video games as a medium can really accomplish, is because it, you know, spends way more time on these aspects where these, you know, the side quests, the side missions, and the journey to the destination rather than the destination itself. The banter in games, I think, honestly, is something that I feel is severely underrated and something I really love and enjoy when playing. But yeah, the entire environment of Halo is just really, really interesting and amazing. One thing is that you can always see, you know, the shape of the ring world arching out above you at all times. You have the two moons that are floating around Basis and I forget the name of the other one. You can tell that I've read most of the Halo books, so I should remember, but yeah. It's also interesting how the world feels big enough that it does feel kind of open world without it, you know, just being dotted with a bunch of, you know, boring towers for you to explore. It's still crafted in a linear style fashion where you're not lost and don't know where to go, but there's actually a very direct route for you to take. And so, you know, despite the fact that, you know, you have a warthog and, you know, you have these 3 areas you have to go to, you know, you can get lost, but not too lost. And because, again, it's not an open world thing, the developers can shape and scope this kind of scripted almost experience or semi-scripted experience where they can control the scope and of what you have to do, where you have to go, and essentially, you know, the narrative and the motion of everything, essentially. Of course, the sound effects are top-notch. The classic Halo shield recharge is etched into my brain. The sound of most of the guns I can recall. The atmosphere of Halo itself is something that is, I think, really important to, you know, immersion. The fact that most of the game, you know, in these segments are typically quiet and you just have the ambience of the world around you really add to just the feeling of being in this alien ring world. It's really, really different. And of course, I think another experience that I love about Halo is that you'll be walking around, you know, the world, and you'll find these giant beacons that are shooting blue beams into the sky. And they have this, they decided to go with a completely brutalist kind of architecture where you understand that this ring that you're on, even though it's made out of natural trees and rock formations and has an atmosphere, you understand that it is artificial because, you know, you have these strange obelisks and these ancient things that don't look made by humans at all, and then it shifts into a natural cliff face or a beach or a meadow, and it's this weird in-between world of being realistic and fake at the same time. And I think the fact that the graphical style of when this game came out really lends to that kind of feeling that this place is real but also slightly not real, and it's an artificial thing. And then, you know, we can get into the lore of what Halo actually is, which is discussed and discovered in the process of this game. And it's an amazing kind of thing. I won't spoil it, but it's an amazing process of the story that you can just escalate to the fact that Halo is not just something. Again, it's the slang that, well, actually, it's the slang the Covenant give it. That it is this holy thing, and the fact that this holy thing it also holds a dark secret to it is just, I don't know, from a storytelling aspect and you know, a lore aspect, there's nothing like it. It's just so cool. Halo also is known for its very unique weapons. I would say things like the Needler um, are very, very cool as an alien weapon. The Needler, we'll see it in later installments, go through a complete evolution of its function and its mechanics. It's very interesting how it transforms, and also how the Covenant forces transformed with each Halo installment. I think, for example, I was going to say Jackals are absent, but no, Jackals are in this game. They just aren't, the standalone sniper units that they are in the later installments. I would just say the explosions of this game are some of my favorite in any video game. They are loud, powerful, and the blast radius is insane. Especially when you get the Spinker rocket, they just, you feel, a little bit of screen shake when you fire it, and when it hits the target, it's like a plume of debris and fire and a little like a mini earthquake. There's nothing like it. I love it. One funny thing about Halo 1 that people might find surprising is that besides the Banshees in the single-player campaign, you cannot destroy vehicles. So the tank, the Warthog, you can die in them, but they can't actually be blown up. They're invulnerable. And of course the Ghost, and the Ghost is, the first taste of, what the alien technology is like. And I think that's a really good way that, the human technology and the alien technology, the gameplay elements of how the game functions, reflects the style and the culture and the attitude of the enemy itself. So it's not just, these things are designed for fun, but each of these things is designed around, it's designed with, it's designed with the lore and the story of the game in mind. I'm trying to think maybe now of the other characters. So besides Cortana and Chief, you of course have Sergeant Johnson, who's almost the comic relief of the game. He gives his big speeches about, how we're going to crush the enemy in a almost Starship Troopers style speech. You have Captain Keyes, who is like the responsible, seasoned veteran who is kind of a war hero, and he's now adapting to this new situation and saying, well, we can, use this thing against the Covenant. We can find ways to, adapt and whatever. And of course, in the third and fourth mission, you end up rescuing him from Covenant capture. You also have Echo 419 in this game, who is, despite being just a voice and never really seeing her, you can, she leaves a definite impression on the player. And your whoever your evac buddy is they have a close soulful contact. Whoever dares to drive a helicopter in a video game world, you are a dangerous and short-lived lifespan, my friend. From Echo 419 to Mike in Resident Evil 4 to who else, to the helicopter guy in Dead Rising. We salute you, fellow one RPG shot transportation vehicles. Yeah, it's just a video game trope at this point. If you drive the evac thing, you're gonna get killed at some point. Oh, Pequod from Metal Gear Solid 5. I think Pequod actually lives though. I'm not sure if there's a mission where he actually dies, because then you'd have to find a replacement. I'm sure there's a scene where he gets shot down. Helicopter in Afghanistan? Not for long. Anyway. Oh, of course, there's Guilty Spark, as you will meet for the first time in this game. And he is really, really interesting as a character, because when you first meet him, he's supposed to be this, this is supposed to be an alien settlement. They're not supposed to speak your language or whatever, and yet they have this incredibly quirky custodian who's been here for millennia guarding the secrets of this ancient, alien artifact. And what I actually love as a gameplay mechanic for 343, for the Guilty Spark, is, first of all, his name. The names in this game, the names in this series of Halo are really interesting. But first, about Guilty Spark. What I love about him in the actual gameplay and the lore is that Guilty Spark will actually talk about lore aspects and certain things about, the history of Halo, but he'll do it during, gameplay. He'll do it when you're in the middle of a firefight, and it's the most ridiculous thing because it's something that he would actually do. He's this eccentric, like ancient AI that's kind of being corrupted by his own age. And he just spouts off like really important information, and he actually chastises you for basically, oh, what are you doing here with like a level 2 energy level suit when you should have at least level 10 and things like this. And he'll start talking about the, the history of like, the installation, and he has his own nomenclature. I think that's something that I really, really appreciate about this game, is the fact that they treat each faction, the Forerunners, the Humans, and the Covenant, as a separate culture. So they have different names for the same thing. The Covenant call Master Chief Demon in the later games. They have their own slang for each one of the enemy types. In the Covenant, the Forerunners have a different way of referring to the Master Chief, and the fact that he calls Halo installation. The Humans call it the Ring World, and the Covenant call it Halo. The fact that there's these different cultures essentially within the game world make it seem really, really interesting and diverse, and it's like you have different viewpoints, and that's really explained through the language of the game and the writing of it, which I think is really interesting. Another thing that even in the human world, there are, the weapons of the world, the assault rifle, the rocket launcher. It has, this is an MK-2A, assault rifle or whatever. But the humans just call it the assault rifle. And, the Warthog, that's like, a whatever designated military jeep. But of course the humans just call it Warthog, or they just call it the nickname after whatever animal it resembles. And of course they have their slang for the Covenant and different weapons and everything. And so it's an interesting. It's interesting because you have the sort of military logistical, nomenclature, and the practical, highly detailed wording and language. Contrasted with the poetic and religious aspects of the Covenant, and how they refer to their worldview. So it's so refreshing and interesting to see a completely different worldview of like, oh no, it's not one army fighting another army. No, this is a hyper militarized human survivalist movement against a theocratic alien collective. It's such an interesting difference between the two, and such a different opposition that as the player you're kind of putting together exactly what is the truth behind this story. And what's great is that if you don't care about story in your game, you can completely ignore all of that and just focus on the fact that guns are really fun to shoot. So Halo always stood out to me because it has a bit of everything. It's a collage and a buffet of not only good story, good sound design, good gameplay, just good everything, frankly. I think it's really cool in this opening section, the second level, where you finally get used to understanding the Forerunner technology. There's a light bridge, and they have this weird brutalist architecture. And I think architecture is interesting too, because later in even in this game, you have the architecture of the Pillar of Autumn, and that in itself is it tells you something about the human world, the human culture. The Covenant have their own architecture, which is very much based around curves and different kinds of sets of threes, while the Forerunner architecture and that of Halo goes from complex nature-looking normal environments that you'd see on Earth to these large brutalistic mega structures that look completely out of place and just beyond alien or beyond human. And it's really interesting that they have a different collection of different types of alien architecture and environments that just make the world feel so damn interesting. Another thing I really love about this game is the death sounds of the elites and the grunts that never really gets old. And maybe I'll talk a little bit about the history and the development of Halo, of at least what I know. One of the main philosophies they said about Halo is that you have to have 30 seconds of fun, and you repackage that over the rest of the game. And I do think there's some nuance there that they said not exactly, but I do think that is essentially what, as a game developer, you want to deliver. You basically have a series of weapons, you have a bunch of enemies spawn in front of you, and you find a way to take them out, and that experience is so well done and so interesting that core gameplay experience you just repackage with slightly different variables over the course of the entire game. So, you might introduce a new enemy type, a new weapon type, but the core gameplay of putting you with a weapon in front of like 10 guys in a dev room is fun. And once you get that working, then you can just repackage it over the 7 or whatever many chapters of the game. The other thing I know about Halo is the development of this game was insane. So traditionally, Bungie came from the Marathon series, and they were made Mac exclusive FPS games. In fact, Halo was slated to be a Mac exclusive until Microsoft bought them out, thank God, frankly, and really launched and made and saved the Xbox as their killer IP. And that's not the case anymore, unfortunately. But at the time, Halo was the biggest game, like of all time, almost, when it came out. Oh god, another thing I love here is also the constant dialogue from the Marines, like, "Hey Chief, give me that gun, huh? It's real good." And then they'd have all this slang and their own terms, and they would just be funny. They would say really funny stuff. And of course, my main thing that I made my personal goal is to make sure that none of my Marines died. And if one died in a firefight, I'd reload the last save sometime and try to make sure that they all make it through, essentially. I'm trying to remember exactly how it started. I think it started out first. You can watch the early demo footage of Demo Halo or Beta Halo. And it's really, really interesting. Like, Chief's design is totally different. There was a little cutscene where you could actually use an energy sword, but it was originally just designed to be a third-person shooter, and that vehicles were going to be the main aspect of the game. Actually, now that I say that, I should correct myself and say, no, actually, they were developing it as a real-time strategy game. So it was an RTS where you have, your Master Chief and your Warthogs. And basically what someone did is they took, well, how far can we make the camera go? We want to focus on one vehicle or one unit or something. And in doing that, they realized, oh, hey, maybe this should be a third-person shooter. And then they're like, oh, hey, what if we went first person and we just do a first person shooter like we used to? I said, no, wait, what should be a first person melee game with energy swords and things like this? And it was called what was the name? It was called like Buff or Mythic or something. I forget. And then they changed it again to something else. I forget. And then eventually it was interesting because it was like 6 months or like under a year until the game was due, and they were like, guys, we have to choose something to do here. And they kind of said, okay, let's just scrap everything and do an FPS. And once they settled on that, Halo as we know it kind of came to be. And I think there's a lot of really interesting things to learn from that story of development. One, this game itself was made by a team of like less than 50 people, and not on a super huge budget, but they did have a budget and backing. They had a tight timeline. The game itself went through a lot of different iterations, and they ended up rushing and shipping it properly by the due date. Maybe rushing is the wrong word. I mean, they were crunching, but it did not come out broken, essentially. And I think that's really interesting because game design now is, thousands of people with a massive scope and no vision, and no one knows what anyone else is doing. And I feel the reason why games were so successful and also different and overall very interesting in this time was because the budget was not this insane balloon sized thing, and you had reasonable teams of people so that the scope and focus of the game did not get lost. And I think that's why games like Hellblade, a very rare AA games, I think AA is the perfect area for something to really shine and become powerful and significant and interesting, because those games are just in the middle where it's balanced. And right now things are so imbalanced where we have too much money and not enough talent. And, compared to, Halo Infinite, they had the creative visionary director leave 3 times. They had 3 different creative directors throughout the history of developing Halo Infinite. And when it finally launched, it was just kind of above mid. So, it's unfortunate, but I think going back to this blueprint, I think you can really see the creativity and the soul and the hope that this team had for this game, and I think it's really amazing just to see it in its perfect form. The one cheap thing I will say about Halo is that what they ended up doing, and they kind of disguised it fairly well, is that they copy-pasted a lot of levels and they did the old reversal. So about half the maps in the game are just played in reverse. So for example, the Pillar of Autumn. And by the way, it's interesting that the human ships and the name of the alien ships have this very poetic style to them. Like In Amber Clad, Pillar of Autumn, while Covenant ships are called things like Under Shadow's Intent and other things like this, which does kind of reflect real life ship names, which are kind of very odd sounding, or they're named after a historical figure. Anyway, but yeah, the Pillar of Autumn, no, that's the first level you do, and it's actually the last level that you fight there on the ship when it's crash landed on the Halo ring. Another thing is that, despite that, they kind of, shade different environments to give the illusion you're in a different area. So, for example, when you board the Covenant ship in like level 3 or something, you end up going back there to get the command codes from Captain Keyes and escaping that Covenant ship, and now there's different enemy types, and the ship itself is destroyed, and you end up going back through a lot of levels. I think the control room is a perfect example, that there's one point where you're getting to the control room, and there's another point where you're leaving the control room and you have to rush in a Banshee and destroy the relays. And kind of the only level that pops out as totally unique is the Silent Cartographer, which I think might be my favorite level, because that's not only a level in which a lot of the lore is being discovered and explained in the game, but it's just very odd to be on this beach which looks like paradise essentially, and you have the contrast of the heavy military weapons rolling through this place that basically is a tropical paradise, but also is hiding a deep, dark, dangerous secret. It's actually funny that I think about the installation under the Silent Cartographer and the fact you're diving deep under this seemingly perfect place into to find this so-called weapon or so-called secret. And underneath this place, it's all this giant mega structure that seems like it goes on forever, and it's so creepy and strange that there's nothing really quite like it, and it sets such a distinct mood that I don't think we even see in the other Halo games, besides maybe Halo 2 and maybe in Halo 3. It's kind of funny as I'm thinking about it, what actually reminds me of that part in the cartographer when you go deep underground. It's kind of like the holes in Legend of Zelda, where you would drop down this hole and you'd find this weird ambient cavern that has this strange little story inside of it that is just waiting to be discovered and uncovered and you know, brought to light. And the fact that you leave via this, you know, strange rainbow pad, and you know, you ascend through the light. You know, the fact that you're uncovering this advanced technology that's been hidden for millennia, it's such a exciting, interesting mood. Again, I'd say the music in this game is just simply the best. It has these big symphonic, epic tracks. This is when gamers would use the term epic unironically, and I think it really started maybe with Halo, where you just have this huge, you know, battle, and it's interesting too how it started as an RTS, where they envisioned these huge battles taking place on the map, and they kind of brought it down to the character level. So that's why when you go into, you know, the assault in the control room, there's not hundreds, but it feels like there's hundreds of enemies and explosions going off and just chaos everywhere. And one of the best things I think this game ever did is the fact that it integrated co-op. The fact that you could play this with another friend through the entire campaign really was, I would say, revolutionary in the way that they did it, because it feels like a game built for co-op. It feels just right, and so much fun, and so many good memories, honestly, playing this game with other people and experiencing a good story along with good gameplay and all the rest of it. And of course, not really in this game, but really starting with Halo 2 and then onwards, the multiplayer in this game, especially finding out that, you know, that there's online multiplayer, really put Halo in a different spotlight. And it's funny that people may not appreciate or understand how Halo was different in this time. But one thing that I found that 343 said that pretty much everyone disagrees with is that, you know, Halo has always been about competitive multiplayer, and that's really not true. It's been about creative, fun, cooperative multiplayer. You know, game modes like zombies, you would have to, on the goodwill of the people, once you got hit, you actually had to force yourself to change teams until the last person was killed. And then it was game over. But zombies, I know zombies was crazy because that started out as like a natural thing people were doing, and people just agreed to play by the rules, which was crazy. But yeah, Halo has always had a cooperative vibe to it. I've also liked Halo from a basic multiplayer perspective because you do have a health bar and grenades. It does mean that if someone gets the drop on you, you have the chance to basically retaliate. And I never liked the Call of Duty series, at least at first in comparison, because it just felt so cheap that someone could shoot you a little bit and you would just die, and you would have to basically respawn. And it was more offensive rather than, oh, if you moved in a group who were all looking out for each other, you could potentially, you know, pick off people. Or when someone's shield is low, you would step out in front of the enemy and say, okay, you know, I'll take care of this. Of course, the multiplayer in the Halo 1 days is very different than the rest of the Halo games, mainly because you cannot destroy vehicles in multiplayer. All the weapons are basically super overpowered, and if you're really doing anything competitively, everyone is going to use the pistol because it's just absolutely super overpowered to a totally ridiculous extent. It's just crazy and insane. Also, I think the sniper rifle is like a one-shot kill. The rocket launcher does, I mean, everything does ridiculous damage, and you don't realize that until you're on the receiving end of it. But honestly, the Master Chief Collection, playing Halo 1 matches, have their own fun to them, especially considering that the spawns are completely broken. It's really funny. The shotgun in multiplayer is a lot of fun. You'll probably die before you get to use it, though. Other really neat things, of course, the overshield and camo. Camo was kind of a new thing, especially, you know, in this context, the fact that you could successfully completely cloak yourself, and, you know, in combination with the motion tracker, it was interesting to, you know, outsmart the enemy, so to speak, either in multiplayer or single player. And of course, you know, the classic Halo maps that end up being recreated throughout the history of the game started here. Things like Blood Gulch, and actually Sidewinder didn't really get it. Got a makeover in Halo 3, but Blood Gulch has been a staple of the series. Beaver Creek as well. But of course, Blood Gulch, and of course, this was the beginning of things like Red versus Blue, which in Blood Gulch they started their little series, and it was just two guys recording, gameplay, via a zoned-in scoped reticle on Halo, and having a little movie take place inside the game. They called it machine cinema, or as it became to know, machinima, which dominated the 2010s and 2000s in terms of video content and stuff and walkthroughs and all that stuff, which is funny because it kind of no longer held on to the fact that it was about producing machine cinema or like little stories in video games. And it was always surprising, some of those old clips and stories that guys made in video games were really, really funny. I can think of things like Special Agent Steve and Secret Agent Bob and Chaos, Splinter Cell Chaos Theory co-op. They did a little like scripted mini series via Machinima for that. That was pretty funny. You had a lot of Halo 2 Machinima, little skits take place. I still have, oh my god, so many abundance. There wasn't a lot of Halo 1 Machinima, but it really took off with Halo 2 and I guess Halo 3. But you had things like, Arby and the Chief, the Codex. Oh, and of course, Halo AMVs. Or funny AMVs where they would take 5 seconds of a song and put it in the game. Those were really funny, and just something that you can't really make again today. The closest thing I could imagine, or I don't know, some new show comes out and someone tries to recreate that via memes or something. World of Warcraft was also very heavily used in Machinima for making skits and things like that. Old school Vocaroos, yeah, and old school just gameplay vids. I think the closest thing that this generation might understand is like Minecraft, videos where someone griefs some kid and deletes his entire map because he's not playing by the rules. Anyway, that's a completely different almost culture, and the culture that expressed itself around video games in the early 2000s, really stemmed from these kind of games, and I would say Red versus Blue in general by extension. I think like a lot of people saw that initial episode or series and they thought, hey, I could do that in video games. I could make a video game story. And of course, people tried to do serious stories, and those were never as successful as the comedies. Funny, a memory just popped into my head. One thing that really blew my mind was, I guess it was an early mod for Halo on PC. And what they modded it to do is that all of the vehicles, at least, were based around the vehicles from the Sonic Adventure series. So you, what was it? And for the Banshee, I think they had Tails Flying Tornado. For the Warthog, they had I don't remember the Warthog, but what I do remember is that they had basically Eggman's mech, and you could actually use the mech and walk around the map with it. And I just remember having my mind blown, like, oh my god, this is so cool. I think there was also a mod for, I can't remember which way it was Ocarina for Halo or Halo for Ocarina, that you could either use the bow and arrow in Halo, or you could use the maps in Ocarina and have like a multiplayer Halo match. Oh no, that's what it was. It was a mod for Halo, and instead of the sniper rifle, you had the bow and arrow from Ocarina of Time. And man, that was really freaking cool seeing that. Yeah, combining some of my two favorite games. I've always felt there's something about Halo that, because it's more science fiction, it's more kind of out there and advanced, that it's attracted a different catalog of gamers rather than the Call of Duty guys or Counter-Strike guys at the time. It was a lot more nuanced, I suppose. Also, there is so many times just playing Halo multiplayer where people would just like they wouldn't try to compete or win the game. They would start screwing around and figure out weird stuff to do. There are times in Halo 2 maps where people would like literally do sword canceling on each other to like get out of the map, and it would be like climbing a mountain. You would like, spend maybe half an hour getting somewhere, clipping outside the map and being like, wow, I've never seen this before and probably never will. And you realize, the geometry of the world is broken, and you can see behind the places where the developers didn't want you to go at all. And working together, you like experience these things, and it was something honestly purely magical. People working together in a game that is designed for killing each other to see something beyond that they would never see before. And that to me is it was a really magical moment. It was really pure and cool. And my last memory of this game is probably the fact that when the second time I played it, my friend got it, and we had a sleepover, and we basically ended up sleeping, well, not sleeping, and we played it the whole night until we got to the final level, the final run. And that's something that I love about Halo and is a staple of the series. It's funny, they didn't do it in Halo 2 because they actually ran out of development time, but it came back in Halo 3, which is that the end of the game usually features some vehicle kind of last run. And so, you have the whole thing blowing up behind you, and in the background, everything's blowing up and people were, yelling, get out of there. And you basically have to take a warthog or some kind of vehicle and basically drive through the last section of the game. So it's kind of funny that in a first-person shooter, the final boss technically is usually either a horde of enemies followed by a vehicle section or a vehicle section only, where your driving skills will be tested as the final gauntlet, which I think is pretty funny, honestly. I also thought, I don't know why it's not as popular, but I always thought that Halo and Metroid Prime were very similar in their style and tone of games in certain aspects. They deal with ancient civilizations, fighting aliens and stuff, and the mystery of the world. I mean, I always thought that those two series were very complementary to each other. And it's funny that I've never really seen any, artwork or, fan fiction or really anything saying, these two universes or Master Chief and Samus, what if they fought each other or something, except for, shockingly, Rooster Teeth and Monty who did that. Oh my god, that classic animation Haloid. I was a screaming fanboy when I saw that animation. That was peak fan service. The fact that you had this Halo, you had Master Chief fighting Samus, and with Samus, along with a bunch of Matrix style animations, it was peak. And unfortunately for Monty he was, it's a completely different story, but he went on to make RWBY, and I love RWBY as well, for only the first teaser trailer. The fact it was just a teaser and a proof of concept, and the fact you had a scythe sniper rifle and she like killed all these werewolves, I loved it. I thought it was super cool. But then RWBY became a show with awful writing, and it happened in Japan as well. The Black Rock shooter effect, where basically you have a show built around a character design. It is just never going to be good. And I think RWBY has like something insane like 10 seasons, and I hate all of them. They're not good. Now that I've seen all of them, I've seen the first season, and the clips I've seen from the other seasons do not impress me. And it was really unfortunate because before I think season 1 was finished, Monty died from like overwork or some odd disease or something, or stress or something, and he was like 36, so he was like super young, just hitting his stride. And I think that's a real shame, because at least if he was still around, the animation would still be really kick-ass. And Rooster Teeth itself, again, I'll admit I bought the Rooster Teeth DVD set for like all 8 seasons at the time. And I started watching it, and I thought, wow, everything past season 1 is just not funny. I might have laughed once at season 2 and 3 combined. So that was a big letdown. It was kind of something like, because you couldn't get it online. It was, it's not on YouTube. So I mean, I guess I could have pirated it, but I just thought, oh no, it'll, I'll show my support and whatever, and it'd be like, oh wow, this is actually not even close to the first season. It's not even remotely good. And I mean, the first season of Red vs. Blue, I think, is still fairly funny, fairly good. But they really tried to do a story thing. They really tried to do a kind of serious story rather than just a straight comedy, and it really, sadly, does not work. It's just sad fact of life, I guess. Anyway, I've kind of really kept away from the story, but the ending to this game is absolutely amazing and breathtaking. Playing this on co-op is unlike anything I've ever played. The enemy designs are cool. Everything about this game is amazing, and I think it's still very playable today. I think I've told as many Halo stories as I can remember and manage, and I think with that, I think I'll leave you with that. This extremely classic game that is going to stand the test of time. It is simply truly amazing and a testament to Western game design. Anyway, with that, guys, I will see you later. Bye-bye.